Good evening, hello, welcome to the only place on YouTube where you'll get a live questions and answer session on tuning your Subaru. I'm assuming you're here because you're interested in that. If you're not, then yeah, thanks for tuning in. But most people that will be tuning in are interested in it or doing it, either because you haven't got a local tuner near you in your part of the world, or you're interested in learning, intrigued to know a bit more, even if you're not going to do it yourself. So hopefully tonight you learn a little bit more. If you've got any questions, please just fire the questions at me. There's no structure to this. This is just whatever you want to cover, whatever questions you got, fire them at me, be they detailed about specific tuning issues or ECU issues, or what ifs or how to's. Just fire them at me, and I'll try and answer them as best I can. I got into trouble in the last live stream on tuning. Someone was a bit annoyed that I said that I don't gatekeep the information, but then I started to promote the academy that I run on here. I stand by that. I don't gatekeep the information, and the academy members that are here tonight will back me up on that. I don't hold anything back. I don't keep any secrets as far as information. It's just I set that aside in an academy, which there's a small monthly charge for, just as a support group, really, just to hold your hand a little bit, because it can be quite scary if you're starting to tune your own car. There's an awful lot of information, an awful lot of misinformation and disinformation about how difficult it is, mainly from people that have got a vested interest in you using their services rather than doing it yourself. So as I say, any questions, I'll give you the answer as best I can. If I can't cover it in a brief answer on here, then join the academy, ask me in the Discord server group that we got on there, and I'll give you a super detailed answer. Right, okay, good few questions coming in already. Thanks, guys. Right, where do I start? Hello, by the way, everyone. I hope the weather is a bit warmer than it was for me today. In the dyno, it was absolutely blooming freezing. If you don't know me, I'm Duncan. I map Subarus. It's pretty much all I do, apart from these videos, to help other people sort of learn and to make videos that people that own Subarus might be interested in watching. Okay, yeah, hi. Right. Okay, right. I've got a couple of questions that I was asked before this that I'll go through those first, and then I'll pick up some other questions. What difference is for tuning for a 95 RON map versus a 99 RON map, or high octane fuel versus a lower octane fuel? Forget about the RON values. I did a video on that. The UK figures are misleading. They certainly don't compare to the US figures of 93 octane or 91 octane or 89 even. But the difference is you'll find if you've mapped it on 95 RON fuel, or the higher quality fuel, the 99 RON in the UK, you'll probably see about a 5 or 6 degrees ignition timing difference between what the car wants on 99 RON fuel versus what it'll let you have on 95 RON fuel. So if you were wanted to do a map that was like for a long distance journey where it's safe, so if you wanted to put your foot down, you still could, you're probably best off taking 5 or 6 degrees out of the ignition timing map and probably dropping the boost down a little bit. This is a question from Zed in the academy. Generally, yeah, a couple of PSI on the boost would be a worthwhile thing. And obviously, once you've got some 95 RON fuel in there, just double check it with a pair of headphones, deck cans, just to make sure that it's happy. Obviously, following on from that, if your car's been tuned on 99 RON fuel, can you run lower octane? No. Sort of. The difference, as I say, is about 5 or 6 degrees ignition timing. So generally at the end of a mapping session, I would take 2, maybe 3 degrees of ignition timing out for a little bit of a safety margin. So if you then ran 95 RON fuel, that 2 or 3 degrees safety margin isn't enough to account for what the ECU or what the engine would need. So you're kind of 2 or 3 degrees into the point where the car could be detonating, and depending on whether it's an ECU that actually listens to the detonation and takes action, or whether it isn't listening, and you'd be surprised how many times the ECU does not hear proper detonation. The only thing I would suggest, if you're going to run lower octane fuel, keep it off boost completely until you've got a fresh full tank of good fuel in there. Right. Snowing up in Inverness. Yeah, we're right by the sea in Bournemouth in the UK, so it rarely snows here. We did get snow here 3 or 4 years ago. Well, actually, no, probably more than that, 5 or 6 years ago. But it's blooming parky. That means cold in UK lingo. I don't know what the definition of parky is in the rest of the world, but right, question. Just a quick one there, just following on from the last session. Neil said the rear lamber on the Forester STI. Did you find out if it does change the short-term fueling adjustments after the cat? I haven't yet, Neil. It's on my list to do. I haven't taken the Forester STI out. It's been blocked in at the yard, so I will be doing that at the weekend. Right, Jack. Hi, Jack. Buns of Steel. Question: do you know why you would get a strong fuel smell under the bonnet and in the cabin after turning the car into high boost? It could be you've got an injector leak. It could be you've got like the fuel rails under the inlet manifold. The clips on those loosen over time. I think it was a recall on the bug eyes. It could be that, or it could just be sort of a backwash from the air out the exhaust, which is kind of causing an issue. It could be the rubber seal around the top of the fuel tank as you accelerate hard and on high boost. It could be sploshing on the top of the seal and just escaping out of that. It would be best to investigate, in my opinion. Right, okay, Mashiko. Hi, Mashiko. What will the values that should cause a concern for air fuel correction and air fuel learning? Right, for people that don't know, air fuel correction is like a short-term trim. So the air fuel ratio the air fuel sensor on the car monitors whether it's rich or lean and tells the ECU that value, and the ECU says, right, okay, I need to bring a bit more fuel in or take a bit of fuel out to get to the ideal. And on the Subaru, it only does this for cruise and idle. So generally it's targeting 14.7 AFR. So that's a short-term correction. If it has to make that repeatedly, then it kind of learns to add fuel or take away fuel. The air fuel correction, it can go plus or minus 25%. On the air fuel learning, the actual learnt long-term trim, it can go plus or minus 15% unless you've changed those parameters yourself. there are various zones, ranges, for idle, fast idle, mild cruise and a fast cruise. And it's the last one of those. If if it's having to learn in that last zone, that fast cruise sort of range, if it's taking out a percentage at that point, it assumes that it needs to take out the same percentage going onwards. And going onwards, it's into boost, it's into, territory where it could cause some damage. So the issues, the values that could cause a concern is if it's taking more than 3, maybe 4% in that range, because it will then take 3-4% right the way up, all on boost. If you're seeing values where it's taking out 10% of fuel, then that is going to make it run lean when it's on boost, and that could be an issue. If it's adding fuel in, not quite so concerning unless it's like super rich. But if it's learning, then the solutions are to make the MAF curve correct or to fix the leak. That's generally the issue. So a boost leak after the turbo will make the car run rich. So you might find that it learns to take fuel away, or split intercooler, or split inlet hoses can obviously bypass the MAF sensor, and that's going to make it run lean. So yeah, generally that last zone, the air fuel learning range D, is the one that is concerning if it's taken out too much. Ideally, you want it to, if anything, add a little bit. Right. I'm talking a lot already. I've had two days in the dyno with the absolutely immense race car, which I was lucky to film as well. So there's a video coming out on that, and this thing is wild, absolutely blooming wild. It had a side exit exhaust, so I've been sucking up exhaust gases for 2 days, which is obviously not great. I don't recommend that for anyone. Right. But this car's wild, absolutely incredible. Right. Majid, would you recommend blanking off the dump valve on a VF42? The modern VF turbos don't seem to mind as far as the turbo is concerned. From blanking it off, you get better sound effects than a dump valve. But the issues you have, if you're running on the standard ECU, when you blank off the dump valve, what it does is the air goes back through the turbo, back out the inlet, and backwards over the MAF sensor. And MAF sensors are designed to read in one direction only. So when you're sending air over that backwards, it really gets confused, and you can get a little bit of a hiccup when you're coming on and off the throttle. Try it and see whether you notice that, see whether you have any adverse reactions from it. It shouldn't harm the turbo in any particular form, because it doesn't stall the turbo, it just sends the air the wrong way through it, and it's kind of like like one of those little wind vanes that you blew on as a kid. It's just going through the wrong way and makes a really cool sound. Certainly cooler than a dump valve. I've read online that a roller bearing turbo shouldn't have the dump valve blanked off. Yeah, read from different places, because that's bullshit. Excuse my language. So I'll probably get this video taken down from YouTube for that. But I've run roller bearing turbos without dump valves for 20 years, and never killed any turbos for that reason. Killed them for other reasons, but not for that reason. The sleeve bearing ones are less able to take it, but the roller bearing ones, they're much more robust. You know, a VF34, which was used on a lot of the rally cars, Subaru rally cars, you know, run those at 2.5 bar of boost, effectively no dump valve to speak of, and you know, sending the air backwards through that doesn't cause any issues. Hi from Italy. Hi Max. Hi mate. Yeah, opinion on the water to air intercooler like P25. I think that was a bit of a curious decision from them. I've never found them to work as efficiently. From a space point of view, they're pretty good, and they're pretty stable temperatures wise, but they never work quite as well as an air to air intercooler or an air to air cooler. A lot of the drag boys use a like a water cooler like that, and will fill the water pot with ice. Works great for a 8-second, 9-second quarter mile. But yeah, I think a normal intercooler works better. I don't know what their decisions were or reasoning behind putting that in on the P25. Maybe just trying to be different. Right. Okay, when I map a standard car for the first time, what's the first thing that starts to limit the performance normally? I.e. intake temps versus EGT versus injector duty, how it takes timing. Probably the easiest way to answer this is for me to explain the process on a let's say someone comes into me with a standard blob IWX. The first thing that I would be doing is make sure that there's enough fueling going in. So I'd do a run to make sure that the fueling's there or thereabout. Get the fueling there or thereabouts. Then start adding boost until the boost is kind of where I expect it to be. I've been mapping Subarus for so long, and you know, on the dyno in particular, you can see, you know, that more boost doesn't always mean more power. A lot of people come into me and say, "Oh, I want 1.6 bar boost. I want the maximum boost." I said, "Well, surely you want the maximum power rather than boost, because they don't always work out the same." On a small turbo, like a TD04, you put big boost through that, you're just blowing hot air in. So you have to take out ignition time and add more fuel to cool it down to account for the temperatures. That would actually make less power with more boost than it does with less boost. So I know roughly on the normal Subaru turbos what sort of boost a turbo will produce. So let's say that blob IWX 1.3 bar is about perfect. Is a good balance of torque, of not heating things up too much by the time it gets to the top end. So if it's making that boost, and then I'm adding ignition timing after taking it down as a starting point, I'm adding ignition timing once the boost and the fueling are sorted. I'm adding ignition timing to get to the point where I'm just starting to hear the faintest crackle of the start of detonation, and that is the point where you go, that's the limit. If there's mechanical limits like fuel pumps that are not flowing enough, then you'd find that out a lot earlier than that. Blimey, -5 up there. Okay, well it's -1 down here, so not too bad. Hi Gary, want to book a remap with yourself very soon, but want a quieter exhaust. Still want the rumble, but at a higher RPM. Any recommendations? Yeah, just look at the last video. Hayward and Scott, I've just put those back boxes on the SH, and I think they're beautiful with the centre pipe, which may or may not go on there at some point in the future. It probably will. It will be slightly louder, but it's still unobtrusive. I can't really hear it on the motorway unless I put my foot down, in which case I can, hear it, which is exactly what I wanted. Some people want them louder. I've got a car in the workshop at the moment that has got no silencers on it at all, and it's ear-bleedingly deaf. It's deafening. Not to my taste. Some people like it, but in my eyes, it gives the traffic police, a good chance to finish the donuts before working out where the noise is coming from. Hayward and Scott, handmade exhausts in the UK, so they're good. Boom, 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 boom. Right, I need to choose between a VF45 and 47, an HLA on a BL5 Legacy. Which one will give me the more grams per second and running stage 1 tune? It will obviously need tuning, whatever you're putting on there, so I think they're probably similar. I'm not familiar as such with a 45-47. There'd obviously be a twin scroll setup on the BL5. Most of the VF turbos will get sort of high 200 grams per second of air. On our dynos in the UK, if a car is running, let's say, 275 grams per second of air, it kind of works out at 275 wheel horsepower, assuming the fueling is optimized and assuming the ignition is optimized. It's a good indication that everything's kind of in balance. Yeah, I would need to research what the 45 and the 47 were off. I can't remember off the top of my head. Right, how much will a nitro? I'm presuming you mean nitrous oxide. NAS, I need NAS for Link G4X, JDM06 STI. When will it work best? It works awesome everywhere, but it is incredibly addictive because you can always just turn it up, and it is phenomenal the difference it makes. It just ramps the curve up. I used to run 300 jets in my Impreza, so it's 150 horsepower just at the flick of a switch. Obviously, I didn't do it as a straight flick of the switch because another 150 in a millisecond is quite undrivable on track. So I had full 3D graphs, tables controlling that in the Cyvex. Nitrous setup, a dry kit, which is probably the best option. Bottles, solenoids, solid state relay to control the solenoid. You're probably less than £500, I would have thought. You can get them a lot second hand. You basically want a diesel kit, which is the dry kit, so it hasn't got the fuel solenoid. Come out of the garage after being investigated, can't find a leak anywhere. Yeah, difficult. Smells are very strange or difficult to find out where they come from unless you can actually see the evidence of the fuel leak. If there is a fuel leak, it might just be backwash from the exhaust fumes. But if you're smelling it under the bonnet, then there will be a leak under there. Right. Okay, how can we modify a target boost map to be safe and effective? Right. I probably wouldn't. If you're looking to start a base map, then I'll kind of leave the target boost as it is, but just bring down the maximum wastegate duty so that it's not reaching the target boost, and then just build the target wastegate duty or the maximum wastegate duty up. I'll show you. That's probably the easiest option. If you bear with me a second, I'll just open up a map. Bum, 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 bum. What car you got? Right, let me open this up. Okay, so your boost targets are in here. So this is a standard hatch STI. Looks a bit different to a normal 16-bit ECU, because it's like the boost targets are based on the requested torque. But you know, if you're wanting to like reduce that, unless you're reducing the wastegate duty, is not really going to do much. So the thing to do is go into the wastegate duty side of things, where you've got a maximum wastegate duty limit. To start super safe, I'd set that to 0, and then it's going to just do wastegate pressure on the turbo, and that gives you a really nice safe starting point. It's the easiest way to do that. If you're not on a 32-bit ECU like the hatch STI, I won't save that. Let's say it is that blob eye WRX that I was talking about earlier. Rather than adjusting the target boosts, so this is a standard map, so 13.6 psi of boost. Rather than adjusting that, if you just zero out the maximum wastegate duty, you again run just wastegate duty. And if you look at this, you know, what was Subaru thinking? This is the standard Subaru map, and it's appalling. Absolutely appalling. It makes no logical sense whatsoever. Right, let's come back to the screen. Right, okay, so let's get rid of that one. Boom, boom, boom. All right. Okay, if your 1000cc injector's maxed out on methanol at 3 bar fuel pressure regulator, set rising to 3.5 bar. Set rising fuel pressure regulator to 3.5 bar will give you some more room on those injectors. It will a bit, but not quite as much as you possibly think it would. There are downsides for running more fuel pressure. It does heat the fuel up. It does work the fuel pump harder. I've experimented up to even running 5 bar of static fuel pressure, and that really heats the fuel up. You know, the same as when you're squashing air into the engine, it heats the fuel up, heats the air up. Squashing fuel into the fuel system does the same thing. Works the pumps really hard, and can well, it doesn't quite add as much fuel as you like. I'd probably say if you're maxing 1000cc injectors out on meth, because you need more fuel for methanol because it's got lower calorific value. Generally on a 20% methanol mix, you'd be running sort of 10-15% more fuel. If you're maxing out the 1000cc injectors, put some bigger injectors. You'll always sell your 1000cc's for a good amount of money. So it'd probably be worth putting 1300s or 1600s in there. And the bigger injectors now are really good. You know, it's not like the old-fashioned ones where the spray pattern at idle is awful. The race car that I was doing the last couple of days, that had I think they're 1600cc injectors, and that idled at 1000 perfectly at 14.7 AFR, and that's even with 272 cam. So it was you know, the bigger injectors now are good. 2006 Jedi Forester Cross Sports with the sport shifts, up turbos, TFA35, worth the upgrade to a TDO4L. Yes, it is. Yeah. The TFA35 isn't quite big enough to have much fun with it, really. It's a good turbo. It's responsive, but a TDO4 or TDO4 hybrid would be really nice on that. The gearbox should cope with 300 that you'll probably get out of a hybrid on that. Best shaping pretzer. Yeah. I'm biased. The Hawkeye. Neil, you're right. You have a Aquamist water injection setup in the house the last few years, worth fitting to supplement high boost of 1.6 plus bar on my GC8. I'm not a massive fan of the water injection, to be honest. It's difficult to get the inputs into the ECU to give you the safety in case the nozzles block or the water tank runs out. If you can get those safety in there, then yeah, it's worthwhile. But on a standard ECU, you can't do that. So all you're ever doing with the water injection is building safety margin for quite a lot of expense and hassle. If you're on a link, I think you're on a G4 Plus on that, I think, Neil. You'll be able to put inputs into the ECU where like, I don't know whether you've got a flow rate on the water injection system, but if you can do that so that if you know that the water injection is flowing, then you know you could assume that the jets are open, and therefore you could switch to a slightly higher ignition timing map or slightly higher boost map. You could do that. It's be a worthwhile thing to do, but I think water meth on a standard ECU is a waste of time, apart from safety margin. But you know, chucking a litre or two of methanol in the tank is better safety margin, I think. Is 2-bar boosted on EJ25 with SE46 turbo a lot in your opinion? Yes, that's a lot. 2-bar boosted on EJ20 on a SE46 would do it, but if you think a EJ25 is another 25% bigger, that's the equivalent of 2.5 bar on a 2 litre. It's that's probably way outside the SC46 efficiency range and would just be generating a huge amount of heat. I think you would make more power with less boost, personally. Okay, oof, we got loads of questions. Um, Right, okay, if you're logging and you're seeing 95-97% injected duty cycle, is this safe or is it pushing a little? Right, so the BP5's got side feed injectors. That is a little high. That it might be because it's running rich. Running it, get a wideband on there and see exactly what the air fuel ratio is. If it's running rich, then leaning it out will give you more injector duty cycle to play with. They used to say back in the day that you shouldn't run them above 90%, but on the top feed injectors, actually you can go above 100 and it is still adding fuel. Sounds a bit wrong that you can go above 100. You can actually get to about 108%. Because what you're doing at that point is getting rid of the opening and the closing times and just expanding that middle bit. So the injectors are effectively static. They're open all the time. It's not advisable to do that. Ideally, you'd want to increase the fuel pressure to give you a little bit of extra headroom or put bigger injectors in. For you, Winston, I would see what it's doing air fuel ratio wise. It might be that it's set too rich. I would doubt that it's actually running 95% or 97% even. I've not generally seen that on a BP5 unless you've got a massive turbo on there. Bum, 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 bum. While helping a friend on the Blob IWX stock turbo injector duty cycle was above 100% at 1 bar of boost, fuel pump, fuel pressure regulator and filter is new. Okay, well something is off on that. The standard injectors on a Blob IWX will flow about 315 horsepower worth of fuel. The standard TD04 won't flow enough for 315 horsepower, and it certainly wouldn't do it at 1 bar. So it's either the fuel pump is wrong, the fuel pressure or dying, the fuel pressure is set too low, or there's some kind of restriction in there. I would investigate that because that shouldn't be above 100%, unless it's running super rich, in which case it could be. The only reason that could be running rich, if that's on a standard map, if the MAF sensor is overreading massively, it could be chucking a lot of extra fuel in there, in which case it's then going to show over 100% duty. But if it's tuned properly, and the MAF sensors, the curve is set up, or the new MAF sensor, or an air leak in the intercooler, or pipe work to the intercooler. If you're set up right, you shouldn't be anywhere near 100% duty at 1 bar on a TD04. Right, hi Steve. Right, I've just got ECU edit and Tactrix. Don't really know how to get started. How do I download the map off your ECU? I did a video early part of last year how to read the ROM. If you search through, it was a live stream that I had a couple of video clips that I put in. Have a look at that. And there's some other videos as well that I've done. I will be doing some more up-to-date ones now that I've kind of getting a bit more used to producing videos. But yeah, search for that reading my ROM video. Okay, fuel ratio at 11.2. Yeah, I would say the fuel pump's dying. Something's not right there. It's not adding up. Is there a way to upgrade the front oxygen sensor on a 16-bit ECU? There is, but the ECU won't really see it or use it or do anything with it. You can put in something like a AEM wideband, and then you can like take an output from the gauge and feed that into the ECU for the lambda sensor. But it's probably not worth it because it's only using that for closed loop, for idle and cruise. When it's on boost, it's not using it at all. It's just assuming that the MAF curve and the fueling tables are fine. There is no corrections going on for fueling. It's best to, if it was me, I would put in a wideband gauge so that I can actually see what's going on when it's on boost. But the ECU isn't going to do anything with that information. And putting it into the narrowband slot on the ECU isn't really going to help you because each sensor is going to feed in slightly different information, so you might actually be confusing it. When is it a good idea to upgrade the cams on a 2.5 STI? I got up to about, I think it was 600 horsepower on standard STI Hawkeye cams and valves and springs and heads. It was right at the limit at that, but I think it was 598 to be fair. Not quite 600. I wanted it to be 600, but it just wouldn't do it. Generally speaking, above 500, you start to choke up the top end of the rev curve. So put in longer duration cams like 272s, just opens it up at the top end. You don't gain anything down below, but the power curve opens up at the top, so you get a bit more at the top. Can you see a detonation at the wideband? Not well. The wideband on the car, if you've got a separate wideband, isn't going to be quick enough to register any detonation. But when there is detonation that the ECU hears, it has two options. It takes out ignition timing, it adds a bit of extra fuel, and if it's in an extreme event, it can also drop the boost down. If you're seeing detonation, or if the ECU's seeing detonation, it will probably be adding fuel, so the wideband could be running or could be showing that it's running richer. Doesn't happen all the time, and it doesn't happen on all ECUs. And as we know, not all standard ECUs will actually hear all detonation, which is why if you're tuning, please make some deck cans or buy some. If you've got loads of money, buy the Plex deck can system and spend £1,000 on it. Or make some deck cans like I did for £40. It's worth it. If it's going to save an engine, it's well worth it. Is it worth the money? I think there's more important things to spend money on. It's expensive. I don't think it gains anything. They're not as robust as the standard one. Would you notice it? I don't know. I think with some of these things, you kind of think that you're noticing it purely because you spent 2 grand on a carbon prop shaft or however much they are. I wouldn't, but that doesn't mean that everyone shouldn't. Right, okay. When mapping for lowdown torque, what's the strategy? Is the power comes from either boost or ignition timing or both. Assuming the fueling's in the right sort of ballpark. If you're not able to get boost, then ignition timing will make it feel perkier, will make it feel more powerful, will create more torque, and it will speed the airflow through the turbo and build up boost a bit quicker. If you've got boost, then if you're after torque, then let it have it on the boost. But the thing to sort of bear in mind is that if you're using a lot of boost early, you're generating a lot of heat early, so the power might not be there at the top end. I don't know whether you would notice, but I'd tell you this as a trade secret for like the big power dyno figures. They don't run a flat boost or like a boost that goes up and then comes down towards the top end. They will generally run an increasing boost level so that maximum boost is at maximum power, so that you're not heating things up too much before you get there. I love my deckhands. I've tried electronic ones, and I've been sat next to people that have used electronic ones bolted onto the same engine whilst they were tuning the car. And at the end of a run, I said, did you not hear the det? And they said, what det? I could hear it on mine. Electronic ones, it's converting a noise to a signal, and then from a signal back to a noise, and it's like Chinese whispers. I think it loses something in the translation. The copper is just what I have lots of plumber friends, and it's just their offcuts for making the pipes. Doesn't have to be copper. Any metal will transmit the sound. It's cheap as chips in the UK, so whatever you've got available. Copper's quite good because it's malleable and quite easy to bend. Alright. Carbon roof. Yeah, they look lovely. But the standard Subaru roof weighs hardly anything anyway. I remember sort of when I was using my Impreza for time and time, I had a company wanting me to use one of their carbon roofs on the car, until we weighed what the carbon roof that they wanted to put on was weighing compared to the standard roof, and the carbon roof was more weight. Forester SJ5 turbo CVT transmission 2015 model. Notice lazy acceleration in sport and sports sharp. There could be some kind of torque limitation on that within the standard map. I would need to look into that as to whether that's there as part of sport and sports sharp. It would make sense that Subaru put that in as standard. They tend to put a lot of torque limitation things in there because, God forbid if we wheel spin or squeak the tyres a bit. I would say that's what it is, unless it's something that's changed recently and it's more lazy than it was. I would say most likely it's in the map somewhere. Right, bum 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 bum. Right, can I pay you to my Subaru? Yes, you can. Quite happily accept money for doing things that I love doing. If you're in the UK, message me, email me, phone, text, Facebook message, WhatsApp. There's a million ways to get hold of me. If you're outside of the UK, it depends on where you are in the world. I do travel. If you're in wildest parts of the world, then I do remote tuning as well. So message me and we can sort something out. Morning from New Zealand. Hello, God, it must be early there. What was that, 10 to? I think there is a little bit more on these. I'm going to put mine back on the dyno, I think next week. I haven't got time tomorrow, but it will go back on the dyno very, very soon. And I'll see whether I can wind the boost up as much as I can and see whether it actually produces any more power. Or any more boost for a starter, but any more power in particular. It is only a TF035, it is only a small turbo, but you know, VF52 is a really nice upgrade. Ooh. What boost strategy do you consider effective? That's very subjective. From a dyno graph point of view, a lovely flat line is great. From a driving point of view, I like it progressive. Certainly from track use, I don't want it sort of hitting with a bang. I want it to be nice and smooth so that it's not upsetting the balance of the car. It depends on what you want. If you're after peak dyno figures for willy waving competition down the pub or the bar, then a rising boost profile will give you the highest horsepower figures. But probably the best compromise is just flat. 1.5 bar or 1.8, 1.9. Life begins at 2 bar. Personally. Yeah, it depends on what sort of driving characteristics you want. Talk about my Forester. Which one? Which one? Yeah, lightweight wheels, definitely worth the money. I was lucky enough to have a set of Ray's C28s loaned to me for a day on my Hawkeye STI for a track test, and the difference in feel of the car with those wheels compared to the big heavy BC racing wheels that I was using prior to that was massive, even compared to the Team Dynamics. The Team Dynamics wheels are nice looking, but they're relatively heavy, but the CE28s were just something else. I just couldn't justify £3,000 for a set of wheels. Will a Precision 5530 RCM 500 take 2 bar boost on a 2 litre JDM? Yeah, it probably would. I'd want to test it on a dyno to see whether it's actually making more power at 2 bar than it is at 1.8. I would suspect it is making more power at 2 bar than 1.8. It is quite a big turbo. But yeah, 2 bar on that I wouldn't have an issue with. Right, we are a few minutes away from the the 1 hour. I normally limit these to an hour because my voice goes. I'm not used to talking to people. I deal with laptops and cars. Right. Well, the SH, I love the sound of the SH. For me, that's perfect. It's the daily driver. The SG9, it's been sat at the garage all week. I've just been flat out elsewhere, so it's gonna get its remainder of running in miles and then an oil change and then back on the dyno. $4.93 on petrol. Yeah. Try it. If it does, great. If it doesn't, then you know, you got to the point where adding more boost is not making more power. Yeah, if it's making 493 on 1.7 bar, that's good power for that boost. Right, okay, I think we are done. If there's any questions, if you're watching it on replay, I should have said this at the start, put your questions in the comments and I will reply to every single one. It might be a day or two, but I do reply to every single message. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you. Hopefully the race car video will come out on Saturday if I get a chance to edit it. I'm sure I will, because I'm excited to see it. It was cool. Right, thanks a lot. I'll see you next time. Cheers.